My sister didn't invite me to her wedding but invited all of my friends. In retaliation for not inviting me, they showed up in crazy outfits. As the eldest child, I was always obligated to take care of Gigi since childhood. My parents expected me to clean up after her, help with homework, walk her home after school, and play with her because they themselves didn't have time for all that due to work. Sometimes even after work, Mom would come home and complain that she had no energy to spend time with Gigi and asked me to read her a bedtime story. Gigi also never made my life easier. She often said nasty things and had no idea how to behave in society. She could blurt something out to people without thinking, and I would end up having problems because of it. For example, my parents forced me to take Gigi with me if I wanted to go out somewhere with friends. And once, she came with me to my best friend's 13th birthday party. We all gave her little gifts bought with our pocket money, and my friend was very happy. Then she opened a gift from her grandparents, a Barbie dollhouse. Yes, we were already a little too old for Barbie, but my friend clearly liked the dollhouse, and she was even a bit touched. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Gigi started giggling, and when everyone looked at her, she declared that it was a stupid gift. I looked at my friend in horror. She looked upset by my sister's words, and Gigi kept giggling. I apologized to the birthday girl and said I would take Gigi home. I was so ashamed of my sister's behavior. She was rude to the birthday girl for no reason at all. I dragged Gigi home and asked why she behaved that way. She just smiled and replied that she simply said out loud what everyone was thinking. And it wasn't her fault if my friend got offended. I was furious and disappointed in her behavior. Later, when I told my parents about it, hoping they would talk to her and explain that she had acted wrongly, instead they started lecturing me about how I needed to be a good sister. They said I shouldn't be ashamed of Gigi in front of others and that I should stop being friends with people who couldn't handle the truth. I was stunned by their reaction. Now I realize they constantly gas at me, just to make me take care of my sister while she got away with everything. As I got older, I began to rebel and set my boundaries when my parents forced me to take care of Gigi or bring her along to different events with friends. I told them directly that Gigi could hang out with her own friends or they could watch her themselves, because I needed my personal time. They accused me of trying to exclude her and said I was a bad sister since Gigi had no friends. Yes, she really didn't have any, but that was entirely her fault. She was rude to everyone under the guise of honesty and ended up hurting people. Because of that, Gigi often sat alone during lunch at school since no one wanted to talk to her, and my parents forced me to seat her at my table, which I hated. Eventually, after many lectures from my parents, I allowed Gigi to join me and my friends. But when I went to college, that was the first time I truly felt freedom. At first, my parents wanted me to go to a college closer to home, but I studied hard and luckily, thanks to a scholarship, got into a prestigious college hundreds of kilometers away from home. My mom begged me not to leave, saying that Gigi would miss me and that I should take care of her and be a good big sister. But I didn't care at all. I moved into the dorm. I was so happy to be away from my family that I never even went home for holidays or long weekends. It felt like I could finally breathe freely, and I didn't want to return to that suffocating atmosphere. We had a Facebook group with my school friends, and I added Gigi there, since she used to hang out with us. In that group, Gigi would occasionally write, asking if anyone wanted to meet up, but no one ever replied. Of course, some of my friends, like me, had moved away to study in other cities, but I knew some stayed in our town and even they didn't want to hang out with her. I realized my friends only interacted with Gigi because my parents forced me to take her along. And now that I wasn't there, they had no reason to see her. I didn't blame them for that. Gigi never stopped making snide, hurtful, honest comments, so I respected their decision. But Gigi kept writing in the group, suggesting meetups. I even heard she called some of them, but they made excuses or ignored her calls. Meanwhile, Gigi and I hardly communicated. Our parents had always forced us together, and I suspect she didn't like me just as much as I couldn't stand her company. So, when I left home, we hardly ever messaged. Sometimes my parents called to tell me news about her life, urging me to visit and spend time with Gigi, but I ignored it. In my final year of college, I did come home because we had a school reunion. I was so happy to see old friends again and spend time with them. When Gigi found out, she said she wanted to come too, because she wanted to hang out with my friends. But this time I firmly told her these were my school friends, and she had no right to intrude. My parents tried to argue, but I shut them down quickly. I explained that Gigi needed to find her own friends and live her own life instead of following me everywhere, because we weren't kids anymore. I thought that would end the matter. At the reunion, I fully immersed myself in nostalgia and fun. We shared stories, remembered school pranks, and our inside jokes. I was having such a good time when suddenly, Gigi walked into the restaurant uninvited. I was shocked. I had clearly told her to stay out of my life, and yet she came anyway. Gigi came to our table and, without giving me a chance to say a word, loudly exclaimed, "Oh, I miss you guys so much!" An awkward silence fell. Everyone looked at me, then at her, not understanding what was happening, since no one had been expecting her. Gigi, oblivious to the discomfort, pulled up a chair and started chatting about how long it had been since she saw everyone. I boiled with anger, watching how shamelessly my sister interacted with my friends right in front of me at an event she wasn't even invited to. My friends tried to be polite, kept the conversation going, but it was obvious they were extremely uncomfortable, and we couldn't talk freely anymore. After lunch, I pulled Gigi aside and asked her to go home. But she brushed it off, saying it was nothing and that I should stop being so obsessed. After all, they were her friends too. Her carefree attitude was driving me crazy, and I was boiling inside, so I decided to teach her a lesson. We went back to the table, and I decided to raise the issue of her presence right in front of everyone so they could speak up themselves. That way, my sister would finally understand how shamefully she was behaving. I asked everyone if anyone thought it was normal that my younger sister had shown up to our reunion without an invitation. To my relief, several friends supported me and told Gigi they felt uncomfortable since they weren't close to her. My best school friend tried to smooth things over and told Gigi that maybe they could meet another time, but today they just wanted to spend time with former classmates. Hearing this, Gigi was embarrassed, and I felt satisfied, watching her finally learn an important lesson about boundaries. She shot me an angry look, clearly blaming me for this fiasco, and left looking dejected. That night, when I got home after the reunion, my parents attacked me with reproaches that I had humiliated Gigi in front of everyone and kicked her out. I explained that nobody wanted her there, that she crashed our reunion uninvited, and that she should apologize to me. But my parents insisted that she was my sister, and I had to be more understanding. Mom said it was always hard for Gigi to make friends, no one wanted to talk to her, and she was glad for the chance to meet my friends, since they had always been kind to her. I countered that I had put up with Gigi for years, but those people were only kind to her because they were my friends and didn't actually want to interact with her. Apparently, Gigi overheard our argument, burst into the room, and declared that everyone loved her, and that I was just trying to take her friends away. I laughed and said, "If that's true, then why in all these years has not a single one of my friends ever responded when you wrote in our group chat or called them?" Gigi looked hurt and started making excuses, saying everyone was just busy. But I snapped back that they were only busy avoiding her, because they weren't her friends. Maybe it was harsh, but I wanted her to hear the truth. Dad began saying that I was selfish and should apologize to Gigi, but I stood my ground. She was the one who crossed boundaries, came to an event she wasn't invited to, and had to face the consequences. That was the last straw that completely destroyed our relationship. From then on, Gigi and I didn't talk and didn't even try to be polite when we saw each other at family holidays. Years later, when I was getting married, my parents forced me to invite her, saying Gigi would be terribly hurt if I didn't and that they didn't want the rest of the family to know about our conflict. I reluctantly invited her, and my parents even demanded that she be my bridesmaid. But this time, I put my foot down and threatened to cancel her invitation entirely if they kept pushing. Luckily, I have a loving and supportive husband who completely understood the dynamic of my relationship with my sister and never questioned why I didn't want her involved in the wedding. Over the years, I started behaving politely with Gigi, but closeness between us never developed. And now to the incident itself. Gigi got married a week ago. Her husband Rick is 15 years older than her. She met him while working at a restaurant. Gigi never stayed long at one job and always told our parents that she wanted to get married. so Rick became her knight in shining armor. She was thrilled that she was finally settling her life. I found out about her wedding from cousins and parents. Unsurprisingly, I didn't get an invitation. Honestly, I wasn't bothered, since we don't have a good relationship anyway. But to my surprise, Gigi sent electronic invitations to all my friends from that very Facebook group I had added her to many years ago. I had even forgotten about that group. Nobody uses Facebook anymore. And I was shocked that she invited my friends, who don't even talk to her. Some of them contacted me, asking if I was going too. And I told them Gigi didn't invite me. They were shocked that she invited them but not me. I explained that I didn't care if they decided to go, since I had no relationship with her anyway. I think this news spread quickly among my friends, because many wrote to me, outraged at how rude it was of her to invite them, practically strangers to her, but not me, even though I once cared for her and looked after her in childhood. I tried to make it clear that I was fine with her decision not to invite me. But since Gigi publicly invited all my friends but not me, it seemed to them that she had demonstratively decided to exclude me from the guest list. I talked about it with my parents, and reminded them how they forced me to invite her to my wedding for the family's sake. But Mom started defending her, saying the guest list was Gigi's decision, and they had nothing to do with it. Feeling betrayed, I told them she had invited all my friends. And because of this, everyone was wondering why she so pointedly crossed me off. But my parents, as usual, took her side and said that those were her friends too and Gigi would be happy if they came. I realized talking to them was pointless, and didn't bring up the subject again. Last week, on my sister's wedding day, I spent time with my husband and son. Kyle knew I was a little upset and took us to the beach. We had a wonderful day. I turned off my phone because I like to have internet-free days when I'm with my loved ones. When I got home, I found tons of messages and missed calls from my sister and parents. Puzzled, I opened the last message from Gigi, which had a photo attached. She wrote that it was all my fault, and that she would never forgive me for ruining her wedding. In the photo were my friends, and I gasped. They were in long, multicolored dresses and looked absolutely ridiculous. One friend even wore a bright boa around her neck. Another came in a summer hat. By the way, a boa is a long, narrow scarf made of fur, feathers, or very light fabric, used as a clothing accessory. I couldn't understand why they would dress like that for a wedding at all. It looked more like a silly costume contest than a celebration. I even couldn't help but smirk at how ridiculous they looked. My sister finally managed to get through to me. Clearly, she had been trying all day. And when I picked up, she screamed that I was selfish and had ruined her wedding. I tried to calm her, saying I had no idea why my friends dressed like that, but she kept blaming me. According to her, I was jealous and had purposely asked them to dress that way to turn her wedding into a joke. I felt a little sorry for her, but I couldn't understand why she was blaming me when I had nothing to do with it. My parents also wrote that they were disappointed in me and that I should have stopped my friends from behaving that way, which, of course, was absurd. I don't know if I should explain anything to them or just let them keep blaming me. I started thinking that maybe my friends dressed that way precisely because they knew I wasn't invited, and maybe I do bear some small part of the blame. Perhaps I should have explained things to them more clearly. I'm guilty that my friends turned my sister's wedding into a masquerade. Well, before we continue, let's answer the author's question directly in the comments. Personally, for me it's obvious. She is absolutely not guilty here, because it was the friends who did this. Whether the friends are guilty is debatable. But the fact that the author is not guilty, that's 100% in my view. Although, in life, of course, nothing is ever 100%, so maybe we should look for that 1% of blame. What could her fault be? That she told her friends it was wrong that her sister, for example, had come to that reunion? But again, I think she spoke reasonably, stated her position, and there was nothing wrong with that. After all, she even tried to include her sister in her circle, but unfortunately, nothing ever worked out. And are the friends guilty? Well, they could have just not gone at all. That probably would have been better than doing what they did. But on the other hand, they wanted to support their friend, who was clearly hurt here, and Gigi herself had once barged in uninvited, so they decided to get back at her this way. Was it good or bad? I'll wait for your opinion, and let's continue. First update. I talked with Kyle, and we both decided I needed to clarify the situation with my family. But first, I had to ask my friends for an explanation. By that point, photos from Gigi's wedding were all over social media, and many people had learned about the incident. I gathered my friends on a video call and asked why they dressed that way. To my surprise, one friend directly said they had decided to dress like that as a silent protest against Gigi's constant habit of sticking her nose everywhere. Since the invitation didn't specify a dress code, they used it as a chance to make a statement. They admitted they had grown tired over the years of Gigi's persistent attempts to insert herself into our group, and sometimes she even badmouthed me behind my back, which they, of course, didn't like. Even though they understood that my parents forced me to drag Gigi along, they still hoped she would eventually stop pushing her way in. But that never happened. Her intrusion at our school reunion reminded them of how irritating she had always been. And when they found out that Gigi had deliberately excluded me from the guest list at her wedding, they decided it was the perfect moment to teach her a lesson. It became clear that my friends had always seen her true motives and considered her more of a burden than a real friend. Their eccentric outfits at her wedding were a way of expressing their annoyance, and giving Gigi a subtle hint that they were not her friends. When I told them Gigi was blaming me for the wedding fiasco, they sincerely apologized. They immediately offered to send her a group message confirming that it had been entirely their idea and to clear me of any suspicion. I thanked them for their support, and assured them I held no grudge against them for how they dressed at Gigi's wedding. Yes, their choice of outfits looked strange, but I understood it came from their long-built frustration. I told them that the most important thing for me was for Gigi and my parents to understand the meaning behind their message about boundaries and stop blaming me. After our conversation, my friends wrote to Gigi in our Facebook group, explaining that the idea had been theirs alone and I knew nothing about it. I know Gigi read the message because instead of replying to them, she called me and started yelling that I was supposedly trying to dodge responsibility and manipulate my friends. She said her wedding was now a family joke and those silly photos were all over social media. I understood her frustration, so I explained as politely as possible that she couldn't blame me for what my friends wore to her wedding, especially since I wasn't even invited. I told her that even after my friends openly admitted I had nothing to do with it, and she still chose not to believe, there was nothing more I could do. I emphasized that I never intended to ruin her day, and my friends only expressed their frustration at her intrusive behavior over the years. Despite my explanations, it was clear Gigi would not accept any version that didn't match her beliefs, and I quickly ended the conversation. My husband thinks my parents will be able to help her sort it out, but I doubt it. I don't know if there'll be any help, but this weekend I plan to talk to them and see if they can resolve the situation. Second update. Hi everyone. A week has passed since my last update. As expected, the talk with my parents didn't help at all. In fact, it only made things worse. When I explained everything, suddenly the accusations rained down on me. They said I should have controlled my friends, implying that their strange outfits were somehow my responsibility. My attempts to explain that I didn't know about my friends' plans led nowhere. My parents, as usual, took Gigi's side, expressing disappointment and saying I should have warned her about my friends. I was baffled and told them I wasn't involved in this at all, that my friends did it without my knowledge. But my parents, like Gigi, refused to believe it. Feeling misunderstood and irritated, I realized resolving this conflict with my family would be much harder than I thought. The strained relationship with Gigi and my parents' constant bias in her favor left little hope for a fair outcome. Kyle, who came with me to that conversation, defended me and told my parents directly that I'm not the kind of person who would stab someone in the back, especially my own sister. He said that on Gigi's wedding day we were away, since we weren't invited, and we had no idea any of this was happening. He stressed that it was unfair to accuse me without a shred of proof. Mom argued that maybe I had egged my friends on when I told them I wasn't invited. But Kyle replied that I had actually told my friends I was fine with not being invited, and their choice was entirely their own responsibility. I realized my parents weren't going to back down and told them, "If you don't want to believe me, then there's no point in continuing this conversation." I also stated that I had endured my sister for years and cared for her, but I wasn't going to be a scapegoat anymore. I told them about my decision to cut Gigi out of my life forever. Mom tried to object, but Dad stopped her. After that, we left to step away from the situation, hoping that over time their emotions would calm down and my parents would see the truth. Unfortunately, they still haven't contacted me, so it seems they've chosen to stick to their opinion. It's sad to realize my parents clearly place my sister above me, even though I was always the one who helped her. I don't know what the future holds for us, but if my parents choose to support her, so be it, even if it's disappointing. I blocked Gigi and for now plan to leave it at that. Third update. It's been 5 months since my last update. A lot has happened since then. First of all, I started going to therapy. I know many of you advised it, since I had so much childhood trauma, and I really needed to talk through my feelings and let out what I'd been holding in. Therapy has changed my life. Now I feel so much lighter. I finally know how to express my feelings properly. And I'm sure I did the right thing when I stood up for myself in the wedding story with Gigi. Over these months, my parents sometimes tried to reach out to me, but instead of clarifying anything or at least apologizing for their accusations, they acted as if nothing had ever happened between us. I quickly realized they only wanted one thing: access to my son, their only grandchild. So I cut off contact with them completely. I don't want them ever to have the chance to treat my child the way they treated me. Meanwhile, Kyle and I focused on our life and found support in each other. I've said this before and I'll say it again: Kyle is a wonderful husband. He knows how hard it was for me to cut my parents out of my life, but he never once made me feel alone in that choice. We're planning to go on vacation with our son for the upcoming holidays. All I can say as a result of this experience is, if you have a family member who is that toxic, please, for the sake of your mental health, cut them out of your life. Don't let that person poison your life. Believe me, one day you will find someone who will love you for who you are. Well, that's all. Thank you for listening to this story until the end, despite my nasal voice today. The thing is, I'm sick. I think you could hear it, and I apologize for that. Also, I suggest checking out our previous videos, which you'll see right here. And make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. Good luck.